want to give you a chance to speak if you still have something. I know you had your hand up. No? Okay.
Look at me.
Then go
Oh.
ahead. I know there were a couple new hands
This
here.
parking thing, this is the first time I ever heard about it. That's all. Is that really an issue? There's plenty of parking everywhere. Everyone here walks out.
We're going to walk to the
Well,
street.
unfortunately, one of the grocers that turned me down, their reason was there wasn't enough parking.
That's exactly
Because they couldn't, they believed that they couldn't make enough money off of the people that walked, that they wanted to have people be able to drive there also. Now, you know, whether or not he's right or wrong, I can't answer that, but it's not my money that I'm asking him to put up, it's his money. If he doesn't want to put the money up because he's afraid it won't work, that's not me to tell him, you know, no, it's not my money.
Look, folks, parking is important. Now, that may not be important to anybody in this room, but it's important to other people outside of this room and outside of this neighborhood. A business today cannot function without adequate parking because they can't live off just you guys alone. That's the basic economics. Now, you look at my kids. I have two. I got a 20-year-old and 18-year-old. You don't walk anywhere, okay? That's the next generation. Now, that may change because of the economics and some of the other things that are going on out here, but they are fundamentally different than us. They drive everywhere that they go. So it's very important that you think about that. Even though that might not be something that you would use, you have to think about that business owner in terms of what other people he needs or she needs in order to be a viable business. And you have to have parking. That's a critical part of any business plan today. Period. So you have to have that understanding. And I know you guys walk more than anybody else in the city. Okay? I understand that. But you alone cannot support these businesses. If you have a grocery store, it is going to have a larger footprint than just the quote-unquote Highland Square area. You have to have that larger footprint, and you have to have the parking there to bring people into that for it to be a viable business.
All right, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. Michael's absolutely right. We need parking. We also need foot traffic. And the trick is to get both of them.
Absolutely.
If you look at that map up there, there's about 300 spaces.
Yeah, it's a nice.
There's plenty of parking.
Huge parking lot.
And what I was saying before, if you lose 4 or 5 of them, you can have a 12,000 square foot store on the corner.
Well, I think what you're hearing from and what Albrecht Incorporated is hearing from grocery operators is maybe that is not accurate for them to invest their money. They want more parking than that. So regardless of the community, there's people who are going to spend their own dollars, and we need to think about that.
Look, I worked for a bank for 21 years. They look at the numbers, okay? They crunch the numbers. They look at certain things, certain facts, and it may be fundamentally different here, but in order for that bank to lend that money, they're looking at certain numbers out of that business, and it has to hit those numbers, or otherwise they're not going to fund it. Particularly in this market right now. That's what's going on right now. So that's a part of what you have to do, and you have to have that larger footprint.
Another way to strangle the with the Portage School, you know, I was at one of the meetings, and there was some mention of more parking being put behind the buildings that are currently there. Is there any plans in the off for that?
No. No. That spot's real tight for that school. It's very, very tight. It's probably one of the tightest spots in the whole city building the school. Very tight.
So when they build that, you can't push that hill in and make more parking there?
We're not taking the theater. Just add that. Leave that alone.
All right, we do have a number of hands, and we also do want to have some time. We have a survey where we'd like everyone to take the time to write in their comments and suggestions. So maybe what we'll do is we've had 3 hands, I think, up for a while. So maybe if you can keep your comments and thoughts a little bit shorter so we have time for everyone. Yes?
Okay. Well, I'm glad the conversation has turned to the south side of the street, and parking is not as big of a problem as it is our old side of the street as it is on a new development. We understand that. Mom and pops like us can get by on what we have, and we're successful at that. However, I noticed on this sheet the quest for the grocery operator it talks about that you may have to discuss other locations and sizes for a grocery store, and that's always been a prevailing theme of Albrecht Incorporated. I just want to get a observation from the room. I personally feel that I don't want Albrecht on the south side of the street, Albrecht Incorporated. I don't want them building a grocery store on the south side of the street. I don't want them developing on the south side of the street. And I was getting a feeling from the room that I want that opinion to be known. If that is true, that we don't want new strip mall development or grocery store development on Highland Square on the south side. And that's the feeling I get for years, that some people would like to take the south side of the street.
Well, I don't know who those some people are or anything, but
Okay.
thank you very
It
much
was
for
your
your
dad.
input.
He pointed it out.
And
While we're on the subject of numbers, you know, you go to prospective grocers and they look at the old Star Market numbers and they go, well, they couldn't make a go of it. Yet an hour ago, it was mentioned that the layout of that grocery store was inefficient. So if we have an efficient layout, those numbers and those figures no longer mean anything. You can't go and say, well, gee, you know, they couldn't make a go of it, but now we've got this efficient layout. You're comparing apples to oranges now. So I would suggest figure out, you know, don't use those Star Market numbers as your baseline for what will and will not work. That's just a...
They were not the only numbers used. I mean, there were a lot of ways of looking at what might make a viable grocery store in Highland Square. So I don't want to leave you with the impression they were the only numbers used. They certainly were not.
Right.
But they were part of what was evaluated in terms of what could go into this size store, how could it be made a viable store, would the efficiency be enough to make it a viable store? You know, there's a lot of things to think through there, and all of them have been, we've tried, you know, Albrecht Inc has tried to evaluate each one independently to try to get an idea of what might be a viable store here. So, thank you. Yes?
My name's Lauren Phillips. I'm a longtime resident of the square. And what I'm hearing from you guys, from everybody here, is that, you know, everybody wants a grocery store that's been established. You know, there's concerns about the capital coming in. I heard Councilman Somerville, Councilman Williams talk about possibly having the city subsidize that. What would it take to get maybe somebody like, you know, someone who's interested in that space, like, you know, Freshway, to come in and to sit down with the city and sit down with you and talk about making that happen? And has that conversation happened?
there have been talks between all parties, the grocery operator, Albrecht Incorporated, and the city. So far, those negotiations have not created a viable scenario. But there is potentially room for a more of a subsidy from the city. And again, the question would be, is that what the taxpayer dollars should be spent on or not? And we understand that some people think absolutely.
Tell the mayor we won't be calling if he votes for us.
She mentioned as an temporary alternative about small business, small vendors inside that facility. Did you mention that?
Yes, sir.
What was the response on that? I mean, as a temporary type operation.
Is it seen as a temporary model? I don't understand. Was it seen as a temporary model or an
I
ongoing
just threw
possibility?
it out as an idea, as a different model.
As a different model.
So you don't
for
have
the
one,
butcher.
the idea was you don't have one person shouldering all the risk. You have little mini businesses within a building, and each individual person is taking their own risk on it. So it's less risky for everybody.
But would they be able to afford the square footage?
Well,
There you go. I'm trying to small guy can't do it. Can't afford it.
It's likely that any model.
Or co-op.